Hey guys, so congratulations on reaching so far. I understand that there are things which may or may not be clear. If it's clear, well and good, hats off to you. If it's not, a bigger hats off to you that you are still trying to persist, still trying to stay, because eventually you will reach there, right? Eventually you will be able to understand all of this, right? So let's now talk about the other aspect of a UI, right? So when we talk of UI, there are mainly three aspects, right? If you see, first is the basic functionality, right? So when we were talking of a Todo application, the basic functionality was to enable the user to come and type the to do, add the to do, and delete the to do, right? The second aspect of UI is adding some aesthetics. I mean, if I give some application with this kind of visuals to any user, he or she is definitely gonna uninstall the application for sure, right? And third aspect, which we may not be covering a lot and which is not really dependent 100% on developer, it's also dependent on designers, the UX, that is the user experience. We are going to talk about it later. Right now, we need to learn a lot of things before we dive into that part. So, again, coming back, right, we need to add some kind of aesthetics. And the way we are going to do is, let's try to first change our text input, right? So we'll add a style prop and we'll say styles. Okay, we don't have a styles object. Let's create a styles object. We'll create a style object by calling StyleSheet.create, and we'll say first let's create a container. We'll say flex1. I already discussed the significance of flex1, and let's change the background color. Let's maybe try c6 hash c6 c6 c6, and we will remove this. First we'll give it to the parent styles.container, and okay, my bad, styles.container, and let's remove this thing and let's see if the background changed. It did change, but doesn't look very tempting. Maybe we can go like really light. Let me try this. It's 255 255 255 0.7 0. Okay, it's not gonna have any effect. I'll do the opposite. Right, 3 2. Okay, this looks good to me. This can be any color for that matter. Let's try to see what are the possible types of customizations we have with text input. So let's say styles text input. Okay, so what do we have is we can give a border width of 1 pixel. We can say border color to be black, and we can, let's save and just see, right? Okay, what are we seeing is that there is a border but things are not looking so great, right? So let's apply some padding to the container, and we'll say 16 pixel is the padding. So I'm assuming you guys are aware of what is padding, but if you're not aware of padding, so basically if, okay, by the way, let me show you one thing. If you click on control command M, and if you click on where is toggle element inspector, if you click on any element, you can just see bunch of properties, right? So I have clicked the container, and you can see, so basically any kind of element you are seeing here, right, whether it's button, text, view, or text input, at the end of day they all are somehow a view. So I'll be referring text input also as a view, sometimes button also as a view, because at the end of the day they all are a view, right? And literally also it's a view, right? Button is a view, right? So if I click on the container, which is actually a view, we can see a couple of things, right? We can see that okay, there's a padding of 16 pixel from all the direction. So what it means is it defines the spacing, right? So if we have a container, padding defines the spacing which will be taken such that that spacing will be inside the container. So if I apply padding, the 16 pixels will be applied inside the container. Whereas if I apply margin, if I would have set 16 pixel margin, then the spacing would have been applied outside the container. So this is the essential key difference between margin and padding, right? Okay, now let me quickly close this thing and let me make it a little better. I'll say border radius as 12, right? Now what border radius does is it it curves the borders at the edges, right? Now you can also make it a little fancy. So what I can say is border left top radius as 12. So now you can see this part is curved, and I will also say border bottom right radius as 12. So you can see I got a pretty cool shape. I don't know what shape is this. Again, this is not something that you'll be seeing, but yeah, I'm not a UI designer, right? And I'm a developer. So we have this thing. Now, what we can see is that since text input doesn't have its own background color, it's just transparent. It is transparent, so that's why we are able to see the background color of the parent, right? And the parent of text input is view, and the views property, if you go container, you can see that there's a background color applied. I don't want that. I'll say I want on my own background color. It's FFF, so it's a white, right? Now I want to maintain some distance between these two, right? So what I'll say is margin bottom 20 pixel. Now as described earlier, that margin is the spacing taken outside the component, outside the element, however you want to refer it to, right? So since I said margin bottom 20, now since I said I want margin in the bottom, and margin always applies outside the container, so there's a 20 pixel, right? Imagine if I would have said padding 20, what will happen? If you would have guessed that inside there will be the spacing would have been applied, then you would have been absolutely correct, right? So we don't need this. Let's remove this. Also, one more thing we can do is we want to update the placeholder color, right? Now we cannot update the placeholder color, so there is one property which we can apply, which is called as color. If I make it blue, see, nothing happens, but you know this blue, it will get applied to the text, right? Can you see? Let me also change the font size as 20. Now you can see better, right? And I will say I want padding left, because I think it's taking too much, right? Sticking too much with the border, right? So I'll say, okay, give 20 pixel, right? Let it breathe at least, right? So, okay, I was trying to erase this thing. So it looks pretty decent and way too fancy. Some UI designers will kill me seeing these kinds of design. Anyways, so what we want to achieve now is that we want to change the color of placeholder. To do that, we have a prop. The prop is placeholder color, right? I will say green. So now you can see that it changed, right? But these are all just to show you. I don't want to use some fancy color. I mean, a circus is not going on, right? So it's better I refrain from doing all those things. And again, I mentioned in a couple of videos back that if we don't apply color property, then by default the system default color will be taken. And remember, in the case of Samsung devices, the default color is white, right? So it's better to always have a color property defined. So I'll just say black, right? And one more interesting thing, if you see, the way I'm using colors are pretty different, right? I mean, one place I've used RGBA, one place I've used black, one place I've used FFF. So not to worry, we will be discussing this as well. But yeah, you can directly start writing, like instead of FFF, you can just say white, right? It's the same thing. Okay, I'll also get rid of these things. I'll just say border radius as 8 pixel. That looks good to me. We have this. Now what I'll do is I want to change this button, right? So I'll give a style prop. Oh, what? Wait, what happened? There is no style props? Why is it so? The reason it is so, because this button component provided by React Native renders the native button component. The native button component for Android and iOS are different, and you just cannot manipulate those things. So since till now we haven't touched iOS, I'll be showing you in future that how it's going to look in iOS. But yeah, this button is not at all customizable. So for that reason, we are gonna ditch the button component, the usage of button component from here onwards, and probably you're never gonna see the button component getting used, which comes from React Native. The other alternative, the other way, is a special type of component called as pressable. So pressable is, one second, let me add it to, yeah. So pressable is one of those components which can wrap any other component, for that matter text, and make them clickable. So in our case, text already has the prop on press, so text is already pressable. But there are components like view. If you try to search on press, there is no such prop. So what if you want to make a view pressable? You just need to wrap it with the pressable, right? And pressable obviously has the prop press. So in our case, we will just use a text and we'll say submit, and let's design this button a little bit, right? So we'll give style to styles dot button container, because this is the container of the button, and we'll say background color as green. Okay, but the weird part is it's taking full space, right? So we'll obviously discuss that why it's happening like this. We'll say we want some border radius of 4 pixel. We'll also say we want padding vertical. I want to apply padding vertically, that is invert spacing of 4 pixel, whereas I want padding horizontal to be 8 pixel. Okay, now since it's taking 100% width, that's why you're not able to see the effect of padding horizontal, but yeah, very clearly we can see the effect of padding vertical, right? That there is a 4 pixel space from top till here, and then from bottom till here there's again 4 pixel. Let's also give some styles to the submit text, right? Style is equal to styles dot submit text, and we'll create submit text. And what we are going to say is the first and the foremost thing which I have been mentioning, since it's a text, let's give it some color, else system default will be taken. And we'll give a font size, and with the font size will be 24, font weight will be, let's say, 400. Let's save it, and the property didn't get applied. The reason, okay, it got applied for some reason, my emulator is stuck, no worries. Now we have this thing. Now what we can do, okay, so now what we'll do is we'll try to shrink our button a little bit, and we'll say width is, let's say, 70% of the parent. And what is parent for this pressable is view, which is the whole of screen. So if I save it, it should occupy 70% space, right? Now I think submit button should also come in center, right? So the way we are going to do is again the flexbox usual thing, right? We are going to say center, align item center, it comes in the center, right? Now also what I want to do is I want to bring the submit button also in center, right? So in order to do that, I have to make its parent, that is this view, having align item as center, right? But if I do that, see what happens. Okay, that definitely brought things in center, but this shrinked, right? So what we'll do is we'll say this is 100%. Awesome, so we have this thing, right? Now let's add some task 1. Now we can see the task 1 is coming here, right? So let's modify that also. We'll say style is equal to styles dot task item, because these are task item, right? Each item. And I'll say that width I'll make 100%. I'll say padding, overall I want to apply a padding of 8 pixel. I want to say border radius of uh, let's say 4 pixel. I want to say border width of 1 pixel, border color of black, and let's see how it's looking. Okay, it's looking good, right? Now what I want some spacing between the submit button and this particular thing, right? Each individual task. So what I can do is, in button container, I'll give margin bottom as 20 pixel. We have that spacing now, right? Now let's add task 2. Okay, we have the second element, but it's not looking so much great, right? Because we again need some spacing. What I can say is each task item will have a margin bottom of 8 pixel. We have that thing, right? And let's also give some color, background color as hot pink, right? So we have the color, right? And we have the background color, but since it's a text, let's not forget that we also have to give it a color property, right? So this video was essentially to give you an idea, to make you understand that you need to play around in order to achieve the styles. Now again, I'm not saying this is looking some stunning jaw-dropping UI, right? What I'm trying to tell you is that there are endless possibilities that you can do, right? So I'm not a designer. If you give me a design, I can convert it into a very good UI, right? If the design is good, I can make it pixel perfect, which we will be doing. But all I'm saying is that deep dive, try to explore a lot of these styles, because functionality is something, if you have a logical thinking, or even if you don't have, you'll be eventually able to build it up. In the same way, the styles, the aesthetics which you are seeing will come with practice, and by practice I mean exploring, deep diving, hustling, that why, okay, that things are getting shifted here, and then how do I fix it, right? So bunch of things can be done. So this is an overview of the possibilities which can be achieved, right? So we are anyways done with the Todo application. It's just we are trying to play around with things, right? What is possible, what is not possible. And in this video we learned essentially two things. First is that we are not going to use the button component provided by React Native because it's not customizable. And secondly, we also saw a bunch of things, right? That how different types of component have different styles. So for example, a view will never have, okay, it has, my bad. Okay, thank you guys. So let's catch up in the next video.